This is ILTV on the hour. We're bringing you the biggest headlines from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Shosh Bedrosian, and today is day 668 of the war in Gaza. Let's get into all the top headlines at this hour. We're learning that President of Israel Isaac Herzog is in Lithuania on a diplomatic visit to the Baltic states, where he says the release of the hostages in Gaza is, quote, the key to resolving the severe crisis in Gaza. He also denied Israel is causing a starvation crisis in the enclave. Herzog held up two pictures of hostages Roman Braslavsky and Evitar David, who were seen in horrifying propaganda terror videos in underground tunnels just a few days ago. And because of those painstaking and heart-shattering images of both men suffering from beyond starvation in the Gaza Strip, there's a renewed request for the Red Cross to visit the hostages in captivity in the enclave. The Red Cross, who already operates a field hospital in Rafah, has not been allowed to access any of the hostages in captivity since they were kidnapped on October 7th, despite the families pleading for them to do so. After the horrific videos of hostages Evitar David and Braslavsky were released by Hamas and PIJ, showing the cruelty, inhumanity, and emaciated conditions the men are being held in, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke with the head of the Red Cross delegation in the region and requested their involvement in providing food and immediate medical care for the hostages in Gaza. That's according to a statement released by his office. The statement says Hamas's lie of starvation resonates around the world, while the systemic starvation is against, quote, our hostages who suffer brutal physical and mental abuse. Here's what else he said in the recorded address last night.
אזרחי ישראל היקרים, כמוכם גם אני הזדעזעתי אתמול. ראיתי את סרטוני הזוועה של הבנים היקרים שלנו, רום ואביתר. צלצלתי למשפחות, חיבקתי אותם בשמי ובשם רעייתי, גם בשמכם. תראה אותם, הם מקים בצינוק. אבל המפלצות של החמאס שעוטפות אותם, להם יש זרועות אבות בשר. יש להם כל מה שהם צריכים כדי לאכול. הם מריבים אותם כמו שהנאצים הריבו את היהודים.
Netanyahu there going into detail about what was seen inside of those propaganda videos and following the Prime Minister's demands for the hostages to get medical support and assessed by the Red Cross. The ICRC released a statement on X saying they are, quote, appalled by the harrowing videos published over the last few days of Israeli hostages. And they continued on to say there is stark evidence of life-threatening conditions in which the hostages are being held, and reiterated that hostage taking is prohibited according to international humanitarian law. The organization says they are reiterating their call to be granted access to the hostages to assess their conditions, give them medical support, and facilitate contact with their families. And President Trump says there is no genocide happening inside of the Gaza Strip when asked a few hours ago if there was evidence of one by a reporter. Instead, the president pivoted his response, focusing on the October 7th massacre and attack by Hamas terrorists that provoked this entire war. He also said that he wants people in Gaza to be fed and that the United States is contributing significantly to help civilians get the aid. Of course, Israel and American officials continue to say that Hamas steals and loots aid that comes into the Gaza Strip. As you can see videos on your screen right now depicting just that, with terrorists on top of these trucks as they come into the enclave with aid below. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee took to X to say, quote, the real story of starvation in Gaza is of hostages being held by Hamas. He also released a weekly overview using official data from COGAT and GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is Israeli and American-backed, and a way to distribute aid inside of Gaza that says, quote, there is no policy of starvation in Gaza except Hamas's deliberate starvation of the hostages. That is a wrap here on ILTV on the hour. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for our next update.